For I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I have kept thy word. Thou art good and doest good. Teach me thy statutes. The proud have forged a lie against me, but I will keep thy precepts with my whole heart. Their heart is as fat as grease, but I delight in thy law. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes. The law of thy mouth is better to me than thousands of gold and silver. The law...
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Psalms 55. All right. So, Psalm 55. We read it last time. We're going to read it again. Maskil. I'm not sure. Instruction. A Psalm of David. Give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not thyself from my supplication. Attend unto me and hear me. I mourn in my complaint, and make a noise, because of the voice of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. My heart is sore pained within me, and the terrors of death are fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling are come upon me, and horror hath overwhelmed me. And I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest. Though then I would wander far off and remain in the wilderness. Selah. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and tempest. Destroy, O Lord, and divide their tongues, for I have seen violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go about it on the walls thereof. Mischief also and sorrow are in the midst of it. Wickedness is in the midst thereof. Deceit and guile depart not from her streets. For it was not an enemy that reproached me. Then I could have borne it. Neither was it he that hated me that did magnify himself against me. Then I would have hid myself from him. But it was thou, a man mine equal, my guide and mine acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together and walked into the house of God in company. Let death seize upon them, and let them go down quick into hell. For wickedness is in their dwelling and among them. As for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. Evening and morning and noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. He hath delivered my soul in peace from the battle that was against me, for there were many with me. God shall hear and afflict them, even he that abideth of old. Selah. Because they have no changes, therefore they fear not God. He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him, and he hath broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. But thou, O God, shalt bring them down to the pit of destruction. Bloody and deceitful men shall not live out half their days, but I will trust in thee. So David delivering a very passionate psalm against, traitorous and wicked men. The focus is, it wasn't a stranger or an enemy, it was my friend. And it brings to mind Judas, obviously. Judas being it is a prophetic. The traitor is a type of just person overall, and so we see the traitor marked out in Scripture, and it's an important figure because the righteous are betrayed, sometimes by your friend. That is one of the worst things that can happen to you. If you think about it, because sometimes people come after you and you don't know why. They're just enemies, and you can kind of and whatever you can. The senselessness of it is sort of expected. You don't expect someone who's like a national enemy to take much stock of you as an individual. you know. And so also, when it comes to this, it's like, if it's a friend though, it's you expect your friend to be someone you can rely on, someone who you can trust. And that's why when someone who you trust, like or a spouse, or one of your disciples, your trusted apostle, someone who walks on the water, who not walks on the water, who rides the seas with the other ones, who did eats of the same bread. He was there for all the miracles. He was there for all that. He partook of the bread and the fishes. So, give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not thyself in my supplication. Sometimes it can feel like God isn't listening, or that he is hiding himself. He doesn't want it. He might be mad at me for some reason, so he's not listening to me today. It's not the case necessarily. Sometimes, I suppose, it could be true that God does not give us what we ask for, because we ask amiss, as it said. And so our prayer could be ineffectual because what we pray for is not what God wants for us. And in that sense, our prayer will not be answered if it's not what God wants for us. And so we can feel ourselves abandoned because we have our eye on a particular thing. Like we think, oh, I want this. This is what I want. This is what I think will carry me forward. This is going to improve my position. This is good for my life and good for the Lord. This is good for everything. That's what I think. I think this is the right move. But the Lord doesn't think so. And so therefore, in my prayer, I may pray on behalf of something I think I'm engaging in, and it may be ineffectual because it isn't God's will. But, God hears us. He hears the prayers of his saints. He hears them all. Especially we who put our faith in him, we can trust that he hears our prayers. And he's not closing off his ear from us. Though at times you may feel that way. That's normal. It's normal for people to feel that way. Just as Christ felt forsaken on the cross, If that's a valid feeling for him, it's a valid feeling for you. It's nothing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that you should rather, you may feel it, but trust and know that despite your feelings, just know that God is to be trusted, and he is not going to leave you cold. Not ultimately, for sure. So attend unto me and hear me. I mourn in my complaint and make a noise. This is a prayer of complaint and mourning. He's pouring out his heart because of the things that have come to pass. He's had the enemy now, the voice of the enemy, the oppression of the wicked. They cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. Hold on a second here. That's good enough. Okay. So, we hear the enemy often, their voices, the things they say. And maybe it's not a literal voice. Maybe it's not a person. Sometimes the enemy says things, but sometimes the enemy speaks to our hearts. Sometimes, like, I've had negativity that I thought, where I felt like I was having a lot of negative thoughts. I guess I don't, where I direct it to myself. Like, oh, you're not good enough. You can't. You're not. Whatever. Mostly something like, you're not good enough, or you'll never accomplish the things you want to do. You'll never overcome the difficulties you want to overcome. Discouraging words. Words of discouragement. Words of that say you can't do things, or you won't, or you're doomed, or anything. Enemy said, because here's the thing, you may trust God, but the enemy says, oh, no, we're going to get you. We're going to take care of you. The enemy promises doom, and the Lord has promised salvation. We have to trust God that, hey, fear not them that kill the body, and they can't do anything more afterwards. That's the most they can do. Jesus is saying, that's a lot. I mean, it's It's destroying everything I know. And so Christ says to have faith. That we have, through our faith in God, access to life beyond the grave, which he will raise us up into. Ultimately, but also, in the midst of troubles, don't get too worried about it, because, whatever the enemy says, whatever the enemy threatens, we have to take it with a grain of salt because, okay, maybe so. Maybe you will kill us. Maybe you will stop us. I don't know what God's will is precisely all the time. I know what his general will is, but in a particular circumstance, nobody knows God's will in every circumstance. That's what I'm saying. It's like, when it comes to right and wrong, we know God wants us to do justly and to walk humbly and to love mercy and that kind of stuff. We know that aspect of his will, but when it comes to like detailed aspects of our life, sometimes we don't know what to do. Because the thing is, if you're praying about everything, if you're really seeking God in all your ways, some of those ways, it's not going to be so cut and dry. Especially if you start questioning, especially when you start getting down to the nitty gritty. It's just like with sin. I don't stop at like, I keep the 10 commandments. I don't commit adultery. I don't murder. I don't steal. I don't covet. I obey all the commandments, I don't stop. We can't stop there. We have to go, like Jesus said, and look at it from a perspective of like, well, whoever's looked at a woman to lust after has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So he's still got work to do on the righteousness front there. And so we're pursuing righteousness down to the nitty gritty, to the very essence of what it means to do right, in meaning internally. And so when you're going to that degree, that is a high level of attainment, and the enemy will try to discourage you. There will be voices telling you can't do things, or that will try to bar us, either both spiritually and in the world, potentially, especially if you stand up for the truth, especially if you stand up for what's right. Right. The oppression of the wicked, the voice of the enemy. For they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. What does it mean to cast iniquity upon someone? What does he mean by that? Cast iniquity upon me. Well, to me, it's like, if I cast insults upon someone, that's obvious because an insult is something that that is verbally directed at someone, and I can see how I place it on them. So how does someone put iniquity on them? Because iniquity is something I do. So there's either two options as I see it. On one side, you could cast iniquity in the sense of an accusation of someone. You accuse them, and thereby you sort of paint them with that iniquity. He's a murderer, and so he is. It's like, even if it's a lie, maybe not something that obviously, it's easy to prove. You're not at least known to be a murderer, or where's the body? There's got to be some sort of evidence, right? But they can also accuse you without evidence of things, They cast iniquity upon you in that way. They make your actions seem like the things you do are iniquitous, like you are full of iniquity. So it's an accusation. The other way is that they oppress me with their iniquity. Like they do evil deeds and it comes on me. I'm the one suffering the consequences of their evil deeds. I'm sorry. The hiccups there. And a little stomach gas. So, they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. Now, my heart is sore pain within me, and my terrors of death are fallen upon me. That does seem to make sense with what I was saying as far as it not being an accusation of iniquity, but rather it's their iniquity is affecting me. sorry, and he uses this, they cast their iniquity on me, as a, that's a figure of speech, because it's basically saying, I'm sorry, my nose is itching like it's going to sneeze. Like the way one might cast verbal dispersions and things on someone, like they're casting iniquity upon him, like evil deeds. I mean, the enemy is doing all kinds of evil deeds to me. Hold on a second, I gotta mute this 1 second. Okay. So, sorry. Keeps jumping back. All right, whatever. They cast iniquity upon me, and wrath they hate me. The enemies will hate you, and if they hate you for righteousness' sake, then that's a good thing, for the things you do right. Because, it's not a wonder if people are angry with us because we do wrong, or because we cast iniquity on others. I mean, God forbid we should be those type of people. And foaming out hatred towards others. So because of the idea that he says, the terrors of death are falling on me. To me, that says when they cast iniquity, I mean, that means like their iniquity is affecting me. I'm being oppressed by their iniquity is the way I have to take this. Because it can't be like they accuse me. I mean, they could be accused still. It could be like I'm afraid of being unrighteously and unjustly punished of what I'm accused. Or whether I'm just being hunted without a cause, I don't know. Because certainly David had plenty of that. My heart is sore pain within me. The terrors of death are fallen upon me. So he's cast iniquity on me. Terrors of death are fallen on me. See how that the things that are on him are iniquity and fall and terrors of death. Fearfulness and trembling. Horror hath overwhelmed me. A lot of language about horror and fear. We should not be afraid. But sometimes you will be. Like the Apostle Peter on the ship. The sea and the waves were roaring. All the apostles, not just Peter. The sea and the waves were roaring, or Peter walking on the water, and he was afraid. He saw the sea and the waves roaring, and suddenly he was beginning to sink. Lord, save me, I'm sinking. They say, Lord, don't you care that we're going to drown? And other examples, like when he betrayed Christ, there was obviously some sort of fear component there. He was afraid to be like, that's not one of his disciples. What of it? He was like, oh, I don't know who he is. He wasn't ready for, he was so certain of himself. I will never, he did not prepare his heart to resist or whatever. Whatever. He fell short in that, and God forgave him. But, it's a lesson to be learned from us, for us. We can be afraid when we ought not be afraid. Sometimes we are. We become in fear, and it's hard to not be. The Lord says, "Fear not." And when He talks about the lake of fire, who goes to the lake of fire? The fearful, the unbelieving, the abominable, and murderers, and fornicators, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars. Now, don't count just because you fear. Don't count yourself as the fearful. But, because we're not Christ Himself, we're not those who have immunity to fear. It's not something we are expected to do, but we have to resist fear with faith, because faith resists fear. We should not be fearful, but faithful, and trust the Lord. But in the face of like someone's got a knife to your neck, are you going to be afraid? Yeah, you're going to be afraid. You're going to be afraid unless you're extra special, and some people are. They don't have fear. That's different. Extra special, literally, they're born without fear. They should become fighter pilots or something, some sort of job that requires that kind of fearlessness, if they're intelligent enough. But other people do fear. The question is, what do we do when we're in fear, in the circumstances of fear? We have to turn to God. We have to turn and trust him. So even when they were afraid on the boat, at least they turned to the Lord and called upon him. And here also, he's afraid, so he does what's right. When you're afraid, call upon the Lord. Now, there's a different kind. Now, the fearful and unbelieving, but those who fear God will live forever. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, the Proverbs say. Directing you away from the paths of death. The fear of the Lord is such a good and useful thing. We should fear God. But why are the fearful counted with those that go in the lake of fire? Because they don't. It's not that they fear God, but they fear everything else. It's the fear of everything else. Because people do not fear God, they fear other things. And that fear is equivalent to reverence and worship on a certain level. Because it affords that thing way too much status. Being afraid of things. Especially when we're consumed by them. And we don't have at the base of it, like, well, yeah, I'm a bit scared, but I trust the Lord. That I trust the Lord. I'm not genuinely fearful. I just have a bit of trepidation because I'm human. I'm a little bit apprehensive because I'm human. But I know in my heart of hearts that the Lord, and I trust the Lord. And so that is the thing. It's like that you have God's trust and you do not actually have fear of the thing. You can, in the moment, you're going to have a physical reaction. You're going to have feelings that equate with fear. But I want you to remember to forbid yourself the intellectual fear. Do not give yourself over into fear, into believing it. You can, like the body is going to fear things. Like when I saw a downed power line and I could see the power surging, in the presence of that power, I was genuinely fearful of it. I didn't run away crying or anything, but I recognized and I felt in my body, my hair stand on end and being like, okay, this is dangerous. Better go do the cutoff switch right away. But I didn't get too close. Never get close to a down power line because even the ground around it can be electrified. So always make sure if you have a cutoff, go to that or call your power company. The thing is, it was a down line on my property, not one of theirs. It was one of my lines. Yeah, but don't handle that yourself, kids. My heart is sore pain with me. Okay. They hate me in wrath, fearfulness and trembling, horror hath overwhelmed me. When people hate you, it can be a terrifying thing because people can be very, they can get ideas about what they want to do to you because they hate you. And they start wanting the things to happen to you, bad things. And start fantasizing about it, dreaming of it. Especially the wicked. They like the thought. I tell you what. People have made me angry, and in my heart leapt to the thought of violence. Not all the time or anything like that, but some people make me so angry. You've heard, every once in a while you hear someone take advantage of a child or something like that. It's like, and you feel like you want to hurt. Not like I just want to see them hurt. I want something bad to happen to them. That's the feeling I get. A very vindictive feeling. So I don't. So we ought not fear the wicked. We should fear God. But the wicked can do things that are, they can kill us. So be prepared to feel the normal feelings you would have, but to hold on to your faith. That that there is really nothing to fear. Deep down, we must know that there's nothing to fear. We want to be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, placidly going into the fiery furnace. Because we don't have a choice. And the Lord can do as he pleases. He can save us, or he can, receive us unto himself on the last day, in the resurrection of the dead. And so he said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, that I would fly away and be at rest. Oh, I would wander afar off and remain in the wilderness. Selah. In such straits that I just wish I could fly away from this circumstance of the enemy. They've overwhelmed me. You know, I'm in a very tight, difficult spot, and I wish I could escape from it. And just get away. Just wander into the wilderness. Just I don't want to have anything to do with life. I would just go away and just be away from here. I've had, feeling like you want to just get away from the situation. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this situation. And there are times even when we wish for death. Sometimes people get in such circumstances, and they don't see any way out, and they think, hey, death is the answer. It's not. We should. Sometimes it is. Sometimes death is the end. It's the period on all of our lives, right? It's the exclamation point at the end of everyone's life. There is a death. So there is a time for death, and we will all eventually meet it. But through Christ, we ought to have a more life-centered mentality. That whether we live or we die, we live or die unto the Lord. And we are alive unto him either way also, because God is the God of the living and not of the dead. As all who sleep in him, he will bring with them, and he regards them as alive. And of course, in God, they already are. All the works are finished. From his perspective, it's all done. So he could show John the end before it came, or a vision of the end, but he'd know what the end was. Oh, there's a Selah here. Though it seems like this part, I guess it's connecting his desire to escape with his desire for revenge. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and tempest. Always a metaphor, or very often a metaphor for, that kind of trouble. The windy storm and tempest, the whirlwind, the S-storm. We call it sometimes the shitstorm. I don't know how to. I get tired of trying to figure out some sort of way to make it better. All right, that kind of stuff. Not just literal windy storm and tempest. He means in the metaphorical sense that the enemy is out to get me, and it's real hot. And man, I would love to escape from this. And he says, when he turns, since he has no escape. If I had wings, I would escape. But the implication is I can't. I can't escape. No escape. So instead, he calls on God to destroy his enemies. Divide their tongues. Which means make them of differing opinions. Make them have disagreement with each other. That's what divide their tongues in this context means. It means let them have, like, I say we do this. No, I say we do that. And when they can't agree on a course forward, it makes the enemies less effective. They can't work together. How can two walk together except they be agreed? Says the scriptures, right? You can't walk together unless you have agreement about where you're going. Unless there'll be some sort of, even implicit, you don't have to make a formal agreement and have a contract. The point is, if we don't agree about where we're going, if we have different ideas about direction, we cannot walk together. I remember when I was young, I didn't understand that scripture because it's too simple. How can two walk together except they be agreed? I thought, well, they could walk together and argue. That's not the point. It's about the walking. It's about, it's like, yeah, we can have an argument while we're walking. We can be totally disagreeing, but we're agreeing about where we're going with this walking thing we're doing together. That's the part. We're walking. You can talk together without disagreeing, but you can't walk together without agreeing. You must agree on the direction of walking, or you immediately start diverging. We have to be in the exact same direction, right? It's kind of, you forget, it's kind of a marvelous thing that people are able to walk together. All right, I got to blow my nose slightly. It's just all gathered up in just 1 second.
Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I have kept thy word.
Kind of wasn't worth it. All right. Divide their tongues. Okay, make them have disagreements. That's a good way to get the enemies. Hey, And as far as a Christian, obviously we don't want to be praying curses on people. I confess I have a time or two, not people, individuals, but like the enemy in a big sense, I mean, the thing is, we want to be careful about people because people, God has, I don't want to be praying against one of God's servants, you know what I mean? But it's certainly appropriate, like if someone's coming against you, to pray that they be confounded in their purposes. And that they be cut off in that their purposes against you should not prosper. And that is always a prayer for someone. Like, because whoever harms you is under the Lord's wrath. If they come to you and do you harm, God is not pleased with them, and they will receive the vengeance of the Lord ultimately for it. So they need your prayers. They need you to pray, God, dissuade them from this course. Let them be confused and confounded. So that's all right. I don't want to pray, God, destroy their souls who hurt me. Because I don't know. It's like maybe I just need chastising. And the people who are hurting me it's just my own perception. It's like it's not real harm. They're not really hurting me. I'm just taking hurt because of maybe, I don't know. Like the madness that can come on you when you have an obsession or an addiction or something. Like when you're addicted to something, people who try to help you can seem like they're hurting you. Maybe that's a stretch, huh? Yeah, I think so. So he says, destroy and divide their tongues. Maybe it means if you destroy refers to the tongue, that's also another perfectly acceptable prayer as a Christian. If I say, that guy who's talking and saying these grievous words, God, destroy and divide his tongue. Or the enemies, let's say, destroy and divide. Because it's sort of saying, if you refer the destruction to their tongue, it can be seen in a metaphorical sense, meaning shut them up. Or take away their ability to speak against me. Like take their platform away. Not that I'm a big fan of deplatforming or anything like that, but if you have a grievous enemy with a platform who is using it to destroy you, there's nothing wrong with praying against that thing they're using to destroy you. Like, take it away, destroy and divide their speech. I know that's all right in terms of prayer, because again, short of the enemy's destruction, as long as they live, they have hope. There is hope for them, that God may yet turn them from their wickedness. And so we want to be careful about condemnatory prayer. We don't want to condemn people, though we can condemn actions and recognize things as being unrighteous. And we can say, God, stop them from harming us. We can definitely pray all those things. And it's saying, we can say, divide their tongues, shut them up, make them go back where they came from, whatever it requires to stop the enemy from doing the harm. But it's okay because it's not actually for their destruction. If it's not for their destruction, it's okay. If it's for the sense of like, well, it'll prevent them from sinning against me, then that's for their good. So that's a good prayer. That which prevents the enemy from sinning against me is good for them. And, so that you're not praying. So when you pray for them to be confounded in those purposes or to not be able to do what they want to do, you're not doing anything that would be inappropriate as a Christian, because it is kind of inappropriate to pray for people's destruction, for their personal destruction and their soul's destruction. Imagine Christians praying about the Apostle Paul in that way before he was converted, and then when he is converted, what their prayer, that all is left over is a kind of a yuck, like of a bitterness and a thirst for revenge that they should have not pointed at the man, but rather his work, that these works that they could be put to an end, and they were put to an end. At least, I don't know if the Pharisees ever had quite a servant like Paul, who was so willing to go the extra mile as far as to go out of his way to persecute the church. He said, destroy and divide their tongues, for I have seen violence and strife in this city. That's the place where violence and strife often is found. And when you gather people together, right, they start getting on each other's nerves, making each other angry. When you have neighbors, you have problems. Not always. But the existence of neighbors means that there's always a possibility of difficulties with neighbors, right? I've always had good relationships with my neighbors. Though honestly, it's been one way at times. Like, I'm a good neighbor and I have a good relationship with them, but I don't like them. Sometimes not currently, but I think way back where I used to live, there we had a neighbor there that I got along with him, but it was like I always felt like I gotta watch this guy and be careful about him, because he's a scumbag, so you gotta watch it, So I want to have a good relation. I don't want to have the scumbag, with knives out for me. So I try to live peaceably with all men. I don't want to offend someone who is, potentially willing to do things to hurt me. Even if they are, not physical hurts, maybe just like, minor. The type of person that's willing to vandalize your property, or your home. Well, that's property, right? Day and night they go about on the walls of mischief also. Day and night they're going around on the walls. What it means is like the city is busy. And there's violence and strife in the city. Mischief and sorrow in the midst of it. Wickedness in the midst thereof. Deceit and guile depart not from her streets. And, again, he's talking about Jerusalem in a sense. This is a psalm of David. And, or maybe it's not Jerusalem, because did Saul reign from Jerusalem, or was it at, where did Saul have his, it's not Bethlehem, which is in Benjamin. I forget. But anyways, the point is, in whatever city we're talking about, because it's not, but there is an ultimate, there's a symbolic righteous city, and there's a symbolic corrupt city in the scriptures. And you have the corrupt city, like you see a picture of it in Revelation chapter 17 and 18, the great whore. She is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. And she is that great city in a sense of every great city, in a symbolic sense, having gone to the worst possible impulses of human nature. And so, there's a vision of a perfect city, a Jerusalem, a righteous city, whose walls and whose tabernacles are forever and ever, not to be taken down, and white, and the people that walk therein are dwelling in righteousness. But then there's the portrayal of it as the corrupt city, with people going about on the walls at all hours, up to no good, right? They're going about on the walls at night, up to mischief, bringing about sorrow, doing wicked things, in the midst thereof, under the dark of night, deceit and guile around every corner in the street. Con men, criminals, rapists, robbers. But then he says, for it was not an enemy that reproached me. It was, there's a corrupt city. A little bit of the shifting thought is a little bit throws me off sometimes, because it's like, he's talking about they in the city, and they that persecute me. But his persecution, I guess what you would say, it is they persecute me, but it was brought about by one in particular. Or, in a sense of my own, like it says, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country. It wasn't the city of an enemy in which this is all going on. It's in my own hometown, so to speak. And it wasn't an enemy that reproached me. Then I could have borne it, because I expect enemies to say bad things. Like, I hate you, oh, okay, you're my enemy. I understand. Makes sense. I kind of feel similarly towards you. I try not to, because I'm supposed to love my enemies, but even so, the feelings are there. The feeling is mutual, though I will not act on that feeling. I will act rather on love, because that is the command of God. Neither was it he that hated me that did magnify himself against me. The one who magnified against me was not an enemy, someone that hated me, I would hid myself because I would have known. I would have seen, oh, here comes the enemy. Here comes my enemy. They hate me. They say so. They tell me all the time. So I'd expect it. But no, it was thou, a man, my equal, my guide, and mine acquaintance, my friend, someone close to me. Someone, my equal in that sense that like, not an enemy or something, but someone I trusted. Someone who I thought was right. Someone who even, offered me guidance. Someone whose advice I took. We took sweet counsel together. We talked intimately. We walked into the house of God. We were walking into God's house together. That makes, it definitely reminds me of Judas. But it's the traitor. The backstabber. The one you trust, and then you find out they're not trustworthy. That's terrible. If you've ever been betrayed. We've all felt betrayed in one way or the other. Well, maybe all, not all, but I mean, for many of us may have felt a smaller betrayal, where it's like someone just maybe, you have a secret and you tell it to a friend thinking they'll keep your secret. And of course they tell other people and they betray you. But that's a very small betrayal. Human nature being what it is, sometimes people can't help themselves. Let me tell you something. You're not allowed to tell anybody else. Well, why are you telling me then? Because, if you can't help but tell somebody, why do you expect me to just bear it and not being able to tell anyone either? Okay, I don't want anyone to know, but I'm going to tell you to relieve myself. But you then sit there and you hang on to the secret. It's just, if you have a secret, just keep it. If you want to confess, though, I've kept people's secrets very faithfully. No, my friends are just lucky. They're just lucky. Because I wouldn't expect people to not tell, I told secrets and they got told, and I realized younger that I couldn't trust people. So I don't have a lot of, when you encounter, if you're fairly credulous, meaning willing to believe things as a child, because, you're just not used to people lying all the time to you, you can be easily misled by other children at times, and it can be embarrassing. But what it does, aside from all that, what it does is it gives you, down the road, you end up with an extremely cynical attitude, about people and their trustworthiness. And so, as a consequence, I have very few people that I entrust with much close to me. There's not, the people I entrust who could harm me are few. Who could backstab me like that. And it's probably a direct thing of just having so quickly learned how, as a young person, and it's one of the benefits of school. It taught me how to, I should never trust people. I don't know if that's right. You have to put, because it's like, we should trust the Lord and not in men. But as brothers and sisters in Christ, we should be able to rely on each other somewhat, and we should be able to entrust others with, with things of value, such as our time, attention, and love. It's like, so you can't just shut yourself off from everyone because you don't trust them, and say like, oh, I got to trust God. Well, God has called us to love other people, and that in some way requires a little bit of trust, or at least risking the idea that they can betray you, that you could love them and it won't be returned. All those things can happen to us, but we have to, nothing ventured, nothing gained. We have to, in any case, just as Christ loved his apostles and one of them was a traitor, so we have to love those that may betray us. It's a terrible thing, but it's much more terrible when you consider, the friend who betrays. It's like, it's not I don't want people, I like the people I trust. I don't want them to betray me. That's a terrible thing. It's a terrible, tragic, horrible thing. Especially when we go to the big betrayal. Things that, betraying your life. Seriously breaching your trust. Like I said, it's, I told my cousin when I was a kid about my birth defect, and he told other people, and I'm not bitter against him for it. You know what I mean? It was a lesson well learned, but it's like, I I don't consider that a real betrayal. That's not real. That's just a kid telling, innocently kind of, I told him. I didn't tell him not to tell anybody, as far as I know. Don't tell anybody. I don't think I said that. I just assume it's like, why would anyone tell anyone about that? So to this day, I don't know why anyone would tell anyone about that. Especially because it didn't involve them. Okay. So let death seize upon them. Let death grab them like a lion seizing the prey. The idea of seizure, death seizing. Now that's a very poetic way of saying that. Let death seize upon them, and let them go down quick into hell. It means go down alive into the grave. We read the story of Korah, right? Korah, who went down alive into hell, as it says, or Sheol in Hebrew, not Gehenna, not the lake of fire, but the grave. And literally, in the case of Korah, the earth opened up and they went alive down into hell, down into the grave. They went into the grave alive. And that's sort of death seizing upon them is when you is like a sort of sudden, unexpected death, but also an unexpected death that you see coming. And so, he's calling for an extremely frightening death, a terrifying death, like that Korah experienced when the earth opened up. Imagine the earth opens up under you. All right, the ground starts opening up. You see it opening, and you see yourself falling down and you go down alive into the ground. That's a pretty terrifying way to die. And that's what he's calling for. He says, let them go down quick. Let them go down screaming, man. I want to see them die, and I want them to be afraid when they die. I want them to see death coming like a freight train, bearing down on them. Death is coming. Death is, he wants to... That's what he's calling for, okay? And I understand the sentiment. I want God to punish the wicked. I want them to know they're being punished. I get it. A certain amount of vindictiveness there to those who truly, like when I think about someone who would take delight in harming, like someone I love, or just any particular person, really, honestly. Someone who delights in torturing other human beings or making them suffer. It's like, yeah, I see how I'd like to see. I would like to I want them to know they're dying and then to die horribly. Yes, I want death to seize them in such a way. The idea of death seizing you, it means you're going to die quickly or soon or in a harrowing manner. But it's also a play on the idea of it seizes your conscious mind that you're dying before it happens. Like death seizing you, the terror of death coming upon you. As for me, I will call upon, for wickedness and the dwellings and among them. Okay, so, remember, Korah, I keep forgetting his name. Korah and all his dwelling went down into the pit, actually. It was all that pertained to him, his entire tent and his family, except for his sons who were not part of it. But all his possessions. So there's nothing left. And so, he's describing this of the city. He says they again. It's him and they. There's a them that's persecuting, but there's a him that's at the bottom of it. Right? But they're wicked. They don't care. The they. They're just filled with wickedness, and wickedness is among them in their dwellings. And we're saying that they're so thoroughly wicked that just let them all be swallowed up, kind of like the way it was described with Korah. He's not saying it, though. That phrase, "Let them go down quick into hell," was, I seek God in the beginning and the end of the day. I believe. It doesn't work like that. God rewards your persistence in His own time. He's got His own plan, schedule, etc. It doesn't. Our timing is not entered into it. It's not important. The enemy has the suppression over him. They cast iniquity on him. They hate him. He's afraid, but then he changes his mind. Well, he concludes, actually, I'll just trust the Lord, right? In spite of all this, even my friends are turning against me, but I've decided I'm just going to trust the Lord, even though, because I trusted men and they've turned against me, but I'm going to still believe I can trust God. And then, see, when it says this is a weird sentence. You see why? He hath delivered no one with me. I was alone, and God delivered me. That's usually how it ends. But then, for there was many with me, they'd go that way. See? And how much you want to bet that New American Standard is similarly agreeing that, it's not many were with me. Many were with me at the battle. Meaning, there were many around me, surrounding me. They were with me. In that sense, like, I was with the enemy. And that's the point. Even though many oppose me, didn't I get a new term? Is this the NAS? No, it's still the NIV. It's loading. I'm going to blow my nose while it's loading. Well, the sound does come back on. Okay, let's go. Thanks, sweetheart. Let's just turn this off. Okay. 5 minutes is a long time. I hate that. Okay. That's the price of me with my nose. Okay, so where was I? Where did I leave off? Why did I was looking at that and I blew my nose. And I didn't turn the sound back on. So I was talking about God shall hear and afflict them, even he that abideth of old. The Ancient of Days, all that. So stupid. I've muted it. It's even muted on my own recording, of course. Okay. I didn't say anything that great, all right? So whatever. The battle was against me. There were many people arrayed against me, is what this means. Right? He hath delivered my soul in peace in the battle that was against me, for there were many arrayed there against me. That's the meaning, ultimately. I think the new translators are right. Okay. So God shall hear and afflict them, he that abideth of old, Selah. God shall hear my prayer, he will hear my voice. He's repeating it over. I will cry aloud. God will hear and will afflict them, even he that abideth of old. I can call upon God reliably because I am in a covenant with him. David was in a covenant with God. And though he was not by birth a king, God had adopted him as the king of Israel. And so also, though we are not royalty, though we are not even Jews, he adopts us into his family, and he makes us to sit down with him in his throne and reign with him, as God also made Christ to sit down with him in his throne, which is an astonishing and amazing thing to offer to mankind. But he does ask a lot. He asks us everything. our very lives. Lay your life down as a living sacrifice. You know, they went down alive into hell, and I'm going to go down alive to sacrifice. I'm going to see it coming. You know, maybe I say that, and I'm like, why am I saying that? I don't want to do that. I mean, I don't want to see death coming and it be horrible. Whatever. Maybe it will. I don't know. I'd probably prefer to die in some interesting way, since you only die once. You know, I confess, I don't want to die stupid. So then comes the Selah, and darn, we're out of time though. I want to talk about they have no changes. That's where the call came in. They fear not God. You know, a lot of people may drop off after that silence. I'm just going to say, let's pick it up with after the Selah here in verse 19. We'll finish the psalm. Well, I feel like we're almost done. No, let's just, you know what? I want to talk about, because they have no changes, they fear not God. There's not like 1 minute of talking about that. So we'll pick it up with verse 19 tomorrow. Since that's about where we went blank. So that way we won't really, nobody really missed much of anything. We were just about done anyways. So if they dropped off at that point, when they pick it up tomorrow, we will be picking up at just about the spot where we left off. So thanks for joining me today. We'll be back again tomorrow to continue in the book of Isaiah. The Psalms, continuing the Psalms. Until then, thank you, and we'll see you then. And there should be music playing, but
Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I have kept thy word. Thou art good and doest good. Teach me thy statutes. The proud have forged a lie against me, but I will keep thy precepts with my whole heart. Their heart is as fat as grain.